I got Macomb County covered. You don't have to come here anymore. We're going to do it. And so I did a Freedom of Information Act request to all the townships and cities in Macomb County. Actually, I didn't know that like villages, a lot of villages don't do their own elections. The township doesn't form. So I learned a lot of things, which is always good to learn. But let's say it was 22 or 24 jurisdictions. I'll get the poll book file, the electronic poll book file from all these local clerks, because they have to keep it under 168.811. They have to preserve it for 24 months under state law and 22 months under federal law. 52 U.S.C. 20701 and 20702 require if there's a federal election, you must preserve every record. Electronic records, paper records, you have to keep it all. Ballots, for 22 months. So I got City of Memphis, which is really interesting because they do elections for both St. Clair County and Macomb, which I learned something new there too. So I got their electronic poll books. They gave me what I asked for. I'm like, this is great. I should be able, and I told my wife, mistakenly, I said, honey, 2-3 weeks I should have this audit done and we can go on vacation. Yeah, that's not happening. So what did happen was we got that first file from Memphis and we immediately found discrepancies. All right, that the poll book file that the clerk had did not match the records that the Secretary of State's holding out to the world saying that these are the election, this is the qualified voter file. But then a really interesting thing happened as I went and started talking to more clerks. I said, hey, this stuff doesn't match. You don't delete these files. Because she said, well, we delete them 7 days after the election. I said, what? Well, the Secretary of State says we have to delete them 7 days after the election. I said, the electronic poll book is the public record. That's the originating public record for every election. The state of Michigan made a law that you couldn't use the old paper poll book where you would go and the election inspector would sign you in and check your ID and put the time that you came in and then give you a ballot and then put the ballot number down. Well, they do it now all on a laptop. Okay, and that laptop has a feature at the end of the election, export the EPD history file. Well, that shows all the records. Everything that used to be in the paper book, it comes out into this digital file and they put it on a little USB drive. Well, then they have to upload that to the Secretary of State, but then they're supposed to keep that file for 24 months. Well, right in the Secretary of State's manual, they're instructing clerks to delete it 7 days after the election is certified. I said, this is not good. I told her, you should keep this because, the Secretary of State can't tell you to do something that breaks the law. Well, they can, but don't be foolish enough to do it. Don't commit a felony because it's a felony if you delete these things. And they were thanking me, a couple of the clerks, until the lawyers got involved. So what happened was, when they found out that this guy, Michael Butz, is getting poll books, a letter went out to all the clerks from the Secretary of State saying, do not give, it's a cybersecurity risk. Okay, this sounds just like hydroxychloroquine is going to kill you. So what you have to understand, folks, is that poll book exports a file that's in a CSV format. That stands for comma separated value format. It's a text file. So all it means is as the data elements come out, it's written with a comma after each thing, like first name, last name. So there's a comma, which is a delimiter, so that you can then take that file and you can, put it in a tabular format. So you can import it into Excel, and you can search and sort and do all that kind of good stuff. Well, they said that they could not give out this CSV file because it would give up cybersecurity plans and, source code of their software. I'm like, oh boy. See, little did they know that I'm an IT professional. I've written software for General Motors and Kmart. Remember Kmart Corporation? Yeah, you guys are old enough. You remember Kmart. So I'm like, these folks are up to something terribly bad when they're lying and they're getting the lawyers to parrot, their little message. So So all the other clerks, except for that one clerk in Memphis, denied my FOIA. They wouldn't give me the file. Even when I showed them the one that I did get, look at it's all different. You know, this is the problem. You know, we've got some bad stuff happening here with our elections. So I fought it, I appealed, and I got 3 more of them to give me the file, at least part of it. And lo and behold, of the 4 jurisdictions, meaning a township or a city is considered a jurisdiction in elections. So I got 4 jurisdictions, and not a single voter in the electronic poll book file from election day has a matching voter ID with the state. They're all different. They're all different. And in the poll book file, it shows the date and time that somebody was recorded and given a ballot. Secretary of State says 00,00,00. There's no date. Everybody voted at midnight. Everybody. And so they've tried to explain it away, and the clerks and the lawyers are kind of taking what they're saying as fact when it's not. They're saying, oh, with the system, because the elections go the whole day, we can't give a time. Like, well, these reports over here show a date time stamp. You know what's a more plausible scenario? It's a lot harder to create fake voters and phantom voters if you actually have to put a time, right? It's much easier for all to be zeros. You know, because if I insert you at voter number 320, and you're showing, you know, that you voted like 2 hours after voter number 319 and 321, then hey, there's something wrong here. So they got to get rid of all those details. So I went back and I told all these local clerks, I said, you do realize you're destroying evidence of a crime. The Secretary of State's office is committing felonies. It's a violation of 750.248 to alter a public record. It's a 14-year felony for every violation. And we're talking millions of people having their records altered. And then I discover that they can go back and they can change the history. So I'll give you my scenario. So I lived most of my life in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, 42 years. And I voted there, I registered to vote in 1982, and I voted there all the way through 2010. Then 2011, I moved to Clinton Township, Michigan. I voted there 2011 through 2022. Well, then in December, I moved to Bruce Township, okay, December 15th. So I go to pull my voting record at the advice of Scott Ogney from Jackson, and I go to the clerk, and she gives it to me, and it looks right. It shows I voted in 2010 in St. Clair Shores, and 2011 through 2022 in Clinton Township. Well, then I get the FOIA data from the state, and the state shows that I voted in Bruce Township ever since 2010. Now, I want you to think about this. I've never voted in Bruce Township. I've not had an election yet, because I just moved there. But yet my data showed, and I showed this to all the clerks, I showed it to the sheriff's department, I started filing criminal complaints, and then all the police started, like at the sheriff's department, the detective said, yeah, we're going to close your case, and there's no evidence of a crime. I'm like, I'm kind of confused. I know I'm a brand new self-educated, lawyer. I learned the law. And they said, well, we called the Secretary of State, and they said this or that, and that doesn't matter. And I said, so let me get this straight. So I report a robbery at my bank. I give you the suspect. You talk to the suspect, and the suspect says, I didn't rob the bank, I just made a withdrawal. Oh, I'm sorry, sir, for bothering you. We'll close that investigation. No, you don't do that. You investigate. Well, I'm finding that none of these law enforcement want to actually investigate the crime. And so that's a real problem. But it doesn't make it any less of a crime, right? It's still happening. So I could talk all night on this, but I'm trying to think of what I can distill down. What I will say, though, is part of this awakening I've had, God's also put me on really understanding how to be a competent American. Okay, so everybody hears the phrase, we got a hat back there, where did it go? Magnificent Republic. All right, somebody was, yeah, here he is, magnificent republic. So a republic is not a democracy. So just so everybody's clear, we don't have a democracy, we have a republic.